What's up, guys? I am Caleb Giddings.
I'm Keith.
And I'm Jack.
Still in space.
And yeah, Jack is still in an X-Wing. That is an X-Wing, right?
Yes,
Like you gotta.
yes.
Oh yeah, you can see.
You can see my engines back here. I had a Y-wing one, but it looks very boring. You can't really tell what I'm in, so I got it.
I had the best idea for a my second Star Wars themed tattoo, which is a picture of a Y-wing, but done in kind of the traditional style as this the Han Solo blaster, and then the words under it: "Fly low, fly slow."
I was actually going to get. I'm getting two, but I'm getting a Y-wing with gold leader standing by.
Yeah.
The Y-wing in profile is such an awesome looking ship. Like,
I've got a buddy who has a B-wing tattoo, and his thing is like, I saw that and I'm like, I really want a Y-wing and I really want a tall geese too, and I'm trying to think about a way to make those a combined tattoo.
Like do it into one. Dude, how cool would it be? Like, you'd have to be really committed, but you could do like a full-on Y-wing back piece where it like it starts up here and then goes all the way down, the nacelles come down over your kidneys. Yeah.
I'm done getting tattoos for a little bit. I went and got 2 tattoos randomly. I got my chest tattooed, and that was the most painful experience I've had in a very long time.
Like across like the
I know this won't, like, it's this, but I want you to consider how big my hand is.
Right. So over the left pectoral.
Yeah, my whole left pec is tattooed now.
That's exciting.
And they're like, "Hey, when do you want to do the color and stuff on it?" I'm like, "Never."
You're like, approximately not ever.
It'll be when I forget how much it hurts.
Did you get, so is it like a picture of Moana? Is that what it is? Like,
it is actually a long ship breaking through the storm with my personal rune.
Not a vampire with a Nerf gun?
No.
To commemorate the great almost battle.
Today in Inside Jokes, I got inside jokes. But what we are actually talking about this week is memes, but not, well, I mean, it was a meme, but it was a meme based in reality. I was trying to come up with content the other day, and I got this idea to do a haha funny Instagram post where I'd post like a 2011 open gun, which was open USPSA gun, which, optic, compensator, all of that stuff. And,
say 2011, guys, not a 2011.
No, a 2011.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is really confusing. This is going to
but
confuse
also
people.
The year 2011.
I think I put 2001. But anyway, a competition race gun from like 10, 20 years ago. And then like a serious fighting gun from 10, 20 years ago is just like a Glock 17. And then the next one was a serious fighting gun from 2022 is a Roland Special or a Staccato with a comp and a dot and a flashlight on it. And a competition gun now is a Glock 34 for production division. And it's a funny meme because it's true, but it also illustrates one of the things that I have been saying, over and over again, is how you can see it now better than ever, how competition has driven developments in the tactical and concealed carry world.
Well, it's the same pipeline.
Right.
It seems to happen. It is high-end competition stuff leads to special operations guns, which then immediately jumps to civilian enthusiasts, and then it backfills to the military.
Yep.
Yeah, like that's almost exactly the pipeline that it goes.
No, that's it makes sense because of the speed of procurement and how many units the general military needs, and for different roles. Because if the military needs to, if just the U.S. Army component needs to backfill 1.4 million units, that's a lot. But just doing a few hundred or up to a few thousand for special forces, and then an equal number or twice or even 5 times that number of civilian enthusiasts also pick up the shiny thing, you haven't even gotten 10% of what you need to backfill the U.S.
Right.
Army.
You can't even. That's not even a National Guard unit yet. Right. You're still at like, we got a couple of companies set up here. Well, what's interesting about it is, you have stuff like to explain this development. We started with, competition sphere. They started mounting dots on pistols back in the 80s. All right. And, the big old Tasco Pro points and the rings. And that eventually went to the Seymour, which would be mounted on a 2011 style frame. And guys in the competition world were always looking for smaller, lighter, until you got to, the dots of today. The RMR obviously was the first time where somebody was like, I bet I can mount this to a slide. It didn't work because there's too much velocity. But then the RMR got better, and it got better because it was being pushed both by development at the high level special warfare community, as well as competition guys who are like, we demand better dots. Like both of these
because if
people.
we go back to the original RMR wasn't envisioned really as a slide mounted dot. It wasn't envisioned in reciprocating roll. It was envisioned in the fixed roll, and a lot of the military ones were all fixed on rifles and on machine guns.
I mean, it was originally designed to be mounted on top of an ACOG.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, your height over bore isn't high enough yet. Let's put this on top of this. So
dude, I remember running 249 paras back in like 2009, 2010, and that already has an insane height over bore just because of how the saw is built. So you're already at like 5 inches with the ACOG, it feels like. And then they're like, how about 6 RMR?
Little did they know they were ahead of the heads-up shooting trend that is now popular in the tactical AR community.
And it was a 13 MOA dot.
Yes, it was enormous.
Big dot.
It was big.
It was big dot.
We did the triangles. We did the 12.9 triangles. So we had the big triangle, and then you went down and we had the TA-11 with the horseshoe and the dot underneath it, which after about 4 rounds, you'd lose the reticle because it's an ACOG and the eye box pretty fixed on that thing. So
yeah, I never understood. Like I actually love the ACOG. Like I have, there was, in my opinion, one of the best ACOGs was the little 1.5 power one that they had.
Oh, I love that one.
You know who else? You know who else loved 1.5 power ACOGs? Our sponsors.
Did they? Yeah, good job, Jack. We're gonna do a little. Anyway,
I was like, what are we missing?
Sorry, guys.
Oh God, the money! Protect the money!
Protect the money! Protect the money! So what you guys missed is we had about
that little. 40... I love the stats on that little 1.5 power ACOG because Trijicon tries to be very precise with their stats, and so they're like, the eye relief is here, and the objective lens and everything like that. And then you pick it up, and you're like, the eye relief on this is generous.
It's wherever I want it to be.
Like I can find that reticle in a lot of places that I couldn't on like the TA-31s that the military favored. That one, those had pretty small eye boxes, really good clarity, but pretty small eye boxes. That little 1.5 is like, I'm basically a red dot, guys. Just you'll see it.
And that was what was so great about it, was it had the qualities of a red dot, where it was fast up close, but you had just that little smidge of magnification was nice. Like when you got into the, I had one on a carbine down at Gunsight, and when you got into shots at like 150, 200-ish, you're like, I appreciate that little 0.5x that's on there now. Thank you. Slight magnification. It does give
you just that little like, here you go.
Yeah. It was like a little.
Starts kicking in at about 50, and then it goes out to 152. It's just like, little bit of cheating, just for fun.
But just the right amount of cheating. Just the tip. Just to see if she likes it.
For us. Yeah, I love that little TA-44. That's a nice little optic.
Do you guys remember when there were more comped pistols than there were comped red dot pistols?
Yes.
Right.
That was a really weird moment where people were like, I don't have the money to get my RMR mounted, but I do have the money to buy this pistol comp and see if that works.
I thought you were talking. Okay, so there's actually been 3 distinct periods where there were more comped pistols than comped and dotted pistols. So the first one of those, we're going to have fun with the history of shooting sports development. So a long time ago, when the Earth was still cooling, there was only one division in USPSA, and it wasn't even called USPSA back then. It was still called IPSC, which, as a side note,
better name.
I do prefer IPSC.
I'm listening to Brian Enos's book, Practice Shooting Beyond Fundamentals, on audiobook right now. And my entire life, everyone always just says IPSC, right? They just make it a word. Every time that comes up in the book, the narrator goes IPSC. And I'm like, please stop doing that. It's like every time I'm like, just say IPSC. But anyway, so back in the day, there was only one division. There was open, and it was anything goes. And the first thing that they did when they started moving past just regular tuned up 1911s was putting comps on their 1911s. And then, in 38 Super, I actually had an old school open gun that was built by Wilson Combat on an auto ordnance frame, and I sold it stupidly, but it had mag funnel, stendos for the 38 Supers, and then a big fatty single chamber expansion port comp on it. And let me tell you, that gun was a hoot to shoot. So that was like the first period of comped guns. And then and then, in the competition side, those eventually turned into comped dotted guns. Then we had the ported period. You guys remember when it was port the world?
Oh my God, yeah, okay.
Everything, because sights need to be carbon filled.
Okay, so Glock 17C is probably the fastest gun I've ever shot in my life.
Faster than an 18C?
Okay, so I've got a video of me shooting an 18C, and it's just basically like, it runs. I'm just like,
I'm out of ammo, guys.
Yeah, I beat the crap out of a plate that was like 20 yards down, and the guy was like, oh, kind of got some recoil control there. I'm like, I have your legs for arms. It's not hard.
The difference between jack shooting
I have what's called a physical abnormality, which in this case is an advantage.
The difference between jack shooting a full auto Glock and me is about 14 degrees of lean. I'm like this on it, just all the way forward. So anyway, the ported era was a thing, because then everybody was making ported guns for a while, and it started with obviously Glock.
Did you ever shoot the
that
357 SIG ported Glock?
I did not, and I'm not.
I saw those. I was working at a store at the time, and I saw several.
I loaded one up and pulled the trigger without ear pro in outdoors. Smart. Well, I was outdoors, so I felt like I was like okay to do it. It was like someone had taken a ball peen hammer and smashed it into the side of my head.
The worst one of those that I
that.
did this was also during the port the world era. Was I had a Taurus Tracker 357 Magnum, which has 4-inch barrel and is ported. So not only do I get the cylinder gap, I get the 4-inch barrel and the ports, and I shot a full power 125 grain 357 Magnum out of it, also without hearing protection. So I'm pretty sure that's why I can't hear my wife when she's calling me from the other room.
That do be a suspect in that area. Yeah. I remember during that time that's when I started to see one of my first gun people are special too events, and where I started seeing people put ported barrels in unported slides.
Oh, that's fine. What could go wrong?
Oh yeah, that's a spicy meatball that you're playing with.
Have you ever wanted an almost frag grenade?
Do you hate your eyes? Get rid of them with one simple trick. Brought to you by Glock.
Trick. They're like,
brought to you by Glock.
Make it better. I don't think you know how this works.
Yeah.
Brought to you by credit cards and a lack of adult supervision.
Yeah, there's that. But I mean, it really was like the ported era was a weird one, because everybody had it was like, it's kind of like it is now, how if you drop a new pistol and you don't have a red dot ready model for it available, you're already behind the curve, right? Mm-hmm. Back then, if you dropped a new gun and you didn't have a ported version of it available, you fucked up, son. I remember this because I remember when the M&P Shield came out and people complained that there wasn't a ported model on launch. Yes, and I'm like,
I remember that too.
Why would you want this gun ported? That seems like a silly idea.
It's so small.
And then Smith & Wesson said, okay, we'll make a ported 40 for you, and it's going to shave lead, so get fucked.
Every time I would talk to a SWAT guy around that time, they ran ported guns for their shield guys. And I don't know why that is something that I constantly remember, but I had that conversation like 4 or 5 times. Like, oh yeah, we run Glock 17s, Glock 17Cs for the shield guys. And I'm like,
why?
Well, I mean, now I think why, but I also run a comp 9mm now, so I don't feel like I'm a place to judge.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I just started running a comp 9mm because to get into the third era, to jump ahead, the third era, now factory comps in slides.
I think we're on 4th.
Yeah,
we might be getting into the 4th.
So
no, because
third era is the
aftermarket comps.
Yeah, the KKMs, the Lone Wolf,
Parker Mountain.
Yeah, well, yeah. Parker Mountain's kind of like I run
Parker Mountain's the hybrid.
Big fan, but they're late to the game because I remember like Roland Special 1 is a 2-port KKM.
Yep.
And they probably I've always wondered what it was like at KKM, which was like kind of a sleepy high-end competition shop when like, oh, we're fucking Thursday morning. Let me check we have 400 orders for 2-port comps and Glock 19 barrel. Guys, what the hell happens?
Like, why are all of these going to Fort Bragg? What the fuck? So, but yeah, no, if you think about it, because your third era was when, especially of comped guns, was when people still had to buy aftermarket threaded barrels and attach that comp to it. And KKM was the first one. Lone Wolf had a comp shortly thereafter, which looked just enough not like the KKM comp to not be a problem. And then you started seeing a lot of the other, you saw a lot of people just be like, I have a CNC press. I can make a compensator with varying degrees of success. But that goes back to what Jack was talking about when there were people, it was, a barrel and a comp you could probably get for $250, but then you had to get your slide milled, which was $300-$400, and buy an RMR, which is another $400-$500. So you had a lot of people running around with these cool looking comped Glocks with no optic.
I was one of those guys.
Fair enough.
I ran a Glock 17 with a TBRCI comp, which was one of the first little mini comps.
Did you have to get a shot for that? Jesus.
I had to modify several holsters, and by modify, I mean the old Dremel came out, which is worse than an STI.
No, it's staccato now. You can't call them STI.
Yeah. So I remember whipping that thing out and like shooting it, and I was like, okay, the comp does something, but I'm very nebulous as to what. Like now that I run a red dot gun, I'm like, okay, this is much flatter. Yeah. It tracks better. And they don't pay us. And I have never talked to the guys directly, but Parker Mountain Machining, their comp is muy bueno, big fan.
I need to get one for my 320. I love their 320 comp. Their little short guy there.
Oh, the one that actually like.
I'm
really
just waiting for it to come back in stock. I originally started working with those guys just because they made really good scar parts. And so I got some of those.
Fucking scar.
And then they're like, ooh, look, we do this comp thing. And I'm like, and like most things with handguns, I'm like, I don't know, but me iron sights. And now I'm running comps and red dot guns and everything like that.
Yeah, I run a Magwell and don't carry a reload a lot of days.
Yeah.
I mean, the revolverist of revolver people, built a revolver around one of the 2 integrally comped models from Smith & Wesson, because I was like, everybody else do, I should do too. And then I did. Now, what's interesting though is, you talk about sort of the eras of the compensator on the gun, and I've got the name for this episode, and it's going to be called Compensating. But you talk about the eras that you had, and you had, the aftermarket era, which was kind of, 3, and then you had this hybrid where you started to see stuff like the Parker Mountain guys are a good example, where the compensator design started to be more than just a block you screwed onto the end of the gun. They started to try to integrate it with the actual features of the slide it was going in with. Like those were the guys who, and this did great things like eliminating the need to time the compensator and stuff like that, which is hugely important. And now you have, I think we're really in what really kicked off, I think, the era for was when staccatos became a duty gun, and that brings us back to the meme, because Staccato, for people that don't know, used to be a company called STI. STI used to make guns entirely for competition shooters. Primarily for competition shooters. No, they did make some other stuff, but the primary consumer of STI and their primary market was the competition market. So,
but you could like see there's stuff out there where like it's like, oh, STI, that's just for competition guys. I came up in that. I remember being told like STIs are competition guns. They'll never run seriously. They choke all the time and their magazines fail. I'm like, yeah, screw them. I just need a Glock 19. And then I remember the first time I like saw a picture of a really cool dude, and like in his Eagle Industry nylon drop leg, I'm like, is that 1911? Now that's really fat for a night. That's a 2011.
Now
What's going on here?
Now you're also, you can't skip over in this conversation. You can't skip over the para ordinance era, when para ord was just making frames, and they were making those 2011. They were making that double stack frame, and lots of very serious people would buy that double stack frame and have their in-house gunsmith tune that shit so that it would work with their 45 cal uppers, or in some cases their 9mm uppers. Things that like HRT ran para ord frames for a while. Yes. That is a no punk group of people. So what happened was, STI, they primarily made guns for the competition market. There was some they did have stuff that trickled into the serious face shooting world, but it wasn't their bread and butter. There's some management changes, some things happen.
If you need a comparison guy, think about Schmidt and Bender on the optics side of things. Schmidt and Bender made the original LPVO, and they did it for face shooters. But their market in the US was entirely high-end hunting, high-end labs, to the point that they never marketed the short dot to the rest of the US, because they're like, oh, no, Delta got theirs. That's fine.
Yeah, like, we're good. So anyway, fast forward, STI becomes this company called Staccato, and they start marketing their product as a duty carry gun. And they kept, obviously the 2011 frame, and they brought over, the first gun they dropped was that gun, and I forget what it was called when they were still STI, but it was the Costa gun that had the integral comp in it. And I forget what they freaking called it, but it was like, when STI launched it, it was co-branded with Chris Costa.
It was just called the Costa Ludus. I had one at the job that I was at the time.
Do you have the 45 or the 9?
We had the 45. I shot it and I liked it, but I couldn't get a holster for it.
Surprise.
And I also did not want to be the guy that was like, oh, what do you carry? I was like, I carry the Costa Ludus. I like Chris. I think he does a lot of really good stuff. I think he's a smart guy. I really don't want to pull out a gun with his name on it.
No, I feel that way about. I feel that way about pretty much any branded collab like that. And again, like you said, I like Chris a lot. I think Chris has been a net positive for the industry. But I don't want to carry the Costa Special Edition or
I wouldn't want to carry the Costa any more than I want to carry any other influencer or trainer or whatever out there right now that has a branded rifle like this be mine. Like, that's the general consumer market, go nuts. I don't care. But I don't want the blank edition.
Right.
And that's just so and so.
And I do need to draw a distinction here, though, because I'm friends with Ernest Langdon. With the case of something like LTT, that's not the Langdon edition. They're just a manufacturer. They just make guns when they happen to have. It's the difference between when you buy a Knight's armament rifle, it's not the Trey Knight Special Edition. It's just a Knight's armament rifle.
Yeah. So I equate it to like, if a trainer goes like, hey, I spec'd out something like this, it's called like this thing, you might want to consider it. Those I consider, like,
yeah, for sure.
I've had a Chambers custom. I'm about to order my second Chambers custom. I may want to really look at like the Yeti 2, which is Steve Fisher's thing.
Yeah.
But like Steve Fisher is really smart, and he put that gun together and he said like, hey, here's this package that's the Yeti, but it doesn't have Steve's face on it.
Right. Or his signature.
I don't have to like pull it up and like Steve's face is my reticle.
Well,
like, I would feel very comforted by that. I really would. I'd be like, oh no, it's gonna happen.
I now need to get with Hollow Sun, because I know Steve knows the Hollow Sun guys. I now need to get with Hollow Sun to get a special emitter of Steve's face.
That is a good point, because I think there's a difference between like putting your name on a thing and having it be like the Vanity limited edition versus like Cowan's got the rifle that he spec'd out with Cobalt Kinetics, I think.
No,
I don't know.
Sons of Liberty gun works.
Sons of Liberty, right.
Sons,
so, but yeah. So, and like, I would trust Aaron to spec out a pretty fucking good rifle. So if I was like, I need a good rifle, I can just.
I've seen the rifles. Like, he's just like, hey, yeah, these parts, and let's do green.
Right.
And that was it. Other than
so stuff like that, I'm okay with. But back to the Costa Ludus gun.
Doesn't sign those.
That was kind of your, so that, and then STI becoming Staccato was kind of your transition into like phase 4 of the Compensator cinematic universe, where they are now coming as factory options. You know, you can get them on high-end guns. I suspect that there will be a Glock factory compensator within the next 2 years, because SIG's got one now. Does it look like a lot like the Parker Mountain one? A little bit.
But like,
you know,
I got my first factory compensated one recently. I got the new SIG X Macro, which is just them taking the slide from the Spectre, I think it was, the Spectre 365, and then they put it on their 322 length frame and turn it into a very thin 17 round carry gun. And it's my first time seriously shooting a comped gun, and it does make it. I don't know how much the comp makes a difference versus the fact that it's running a longer recoil spring assembly, but the combination of that does make the 365 go from a very adequate, very controllable gun to shoot, something that's not bad, into something that's genuinely pleasant to shoot. So there is absolutely something there.
No, you're right. It's because I shot the big version of that, the P365 Spectre comp, which I really, really, really wanted to hate, because as we know, guys, I am an avowed hater of the P320 line. And having shot the 320 Spectre comp and also shot the M17 and the M18, I find the M17 and the M18 to be snappy and relative. And for a 9mm pistol, there's a lot more muzzle movement on those than I like on 9mm. The Spectre comp, on the other hand, goes like this. And if you're listening to the audio version of this, I'm making a flat gesture with my hand, because there's almost
He's making a flat noise with his hand.
Yeah, fuck you guys.
But that's one of the reasons why I want to add the Parker Mountain to my 320, because I'm running the 320 with the AXG frame, which already adds more weight, more mass, and makes it feel like a 226, which is why I got the AXG frame, because I like the 226. But now shooting the comped 365, I'm like, nah, I'm gonna put this on the 320 as well, and I'll go with the Parker Mountain one again for the reason Jack and you were saying, is they're melding the compensator to the slide of the pistol now, and that also makes it really compatible with holsters. So I'm not going to have to change my holster, or I'm not going to have to change it much, because I think it'll drop right into my Safariland, no problem. Like,
yes,
it will fit. Actually,
that's not true. You need to mod your Safariland a little bit.
I think the little,
I had to modify my 6350
little muzzle orientation thing. I might need to do that, but I'm running the compact slide, and I think the compensator makes it full length slide, so it might not require a mod.
So I would say in general, you're not wrong to buy a super bougie pistol these days.
No.
I used to say that you were.
You treat yourself.
Right.
I will say, the more you shoot, the more you're like, man, I'm just fighting for percentages here. And they're not wild percentages, but they are percentages. They do exist. There is one thing you can argue, do you need a compensator back and forth all you want? I think there's merits to both sides of it. I do think at this point, though,
no.
We are done arguing about red dots.
Did you guys notice we didn't even talk about red dots in this because red dots on pistols are here, guys. I've figured out how to put them on revolvers at this point. Red dots on pistols, they are here. They're here to stay. The technology is mature.
The best argument I've ever heard for the red dot, because Jack and I were both real hesitant to put red dots on our guns. We hesitated. We were probably a solid year behind the start of that arc because we're like, I don't know.
I had an RMR on an MP,
because we saw like the RMR failures, the type 1s that didn't have the shock controlled electronics in them. We saw those break. We knew they were expensive. There weren't a lot of dots tailored to it at the time. So we were hesitant to do that. But the best argument I've ever seen to explain why red dots make sense on pistols is if the red dot sights and iron sights were developed in parallel, the guys inventing iron sights would have been laughed off like, yours sucks.
Yeah, no, that's fair. This is bullcrap. You have to look at it. You can't look at the thing you're trying to kill.
Everybody with the red dot would have been no, much easier. Red dot, much easier. Makes all the sense.
All right, guys. And on that note, red dots are great. Competition shooting drives the gear development for elite special operations, which drives gear development for high-level civilians, which drives gear development for the military, which eventually trickles out to the mainstream. That's the episode. Buy cool guns, spend money, support the sponsors, like, share, subscribe. Definitely don't chain people up in your basement and force them to listen to these episodes. And guys, I have good news. Top Gun Maverick is now available on digital, so I'm going to watch that this week and I will report back. All right, That's it.